Kelly, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you see this? Did you get the same message I got?
I did. I'm so disappointed.
We're not going to be in person again this year?
We're not. We're not. I guess the good news is we get to go use our FCTV studio.
What studio?
We have a studio down in the basement of City Hall.
We have a basement?
We do.
Oh, well, I guess we are in the second year of a global pandemic.
Yeah, we'll just make the best of it.
All right, let's do it.
Well, good evening, Fort Collins, and hello, Kelly and Mayor. I'm so glad you found us in the basement. We just want to welcome you all to the 2022 State of the City Address. My name's Amanda. I'm the Communications Director for the City of Fort Collins, and we're disappointed to not be with you in person tonight, but really glad to have you join us. I just want to give a little plug for those of you watching, wherever you may be watching. We have a great partnership going on right now with NoCo Nosh. And we're offering $5 off delivery service now through February 3rd. So if you're watching at home and you'd like to get a little snack or a bite from your local favorite restaurant, just use the coupon code FOCOLOVE for that $5 discount. And I'm really excited to introduce Mayor Jenny Arndt and our interim city manager, Kelly DiMartino. And I know you all would like to welcome folks too. So Mayor, I'll turn to you.
Well, thanks. Hi, Fort Collins. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome to the first day of the city that interim city manager and I will do together. We're very sorry, as our little vignette said at the beginning, and disappointed that we couldn't share this evening with you live, but we're confident and hopeful we'll be back next year. And I would like to give a shout out to my fellow council members and any other elected officials watching tonight who help make our community as strong as it is. So thank you.
Well, good evening, Fort Collins. I'm Kelly DiMartino, and I am also very pleased to be joining you this evening. I'm having a little bit of deja vu flashback because I've been in the communications role for the city for years ago and used to spend a fair amount of time down in this studio, so it's fun to be back. But I want to just do a shout out and welcome this evening to the city's executive lead team who's joining us, and also many of our colleagues from across the city. I'm really looking forward to this evening. And although we originally planned to be here because of health reasons with the pandemic, it turned out that you're all getting to stay warm and cozy tonight while it snows out there. So we hope you enjoy us.
Well, thank you both. So, first state of the city with the two of you in these new roles, and I'm sure folks are pretty familiar with you with your work here on most Tuesday nights. But since you're a little bit newer to these roles, maybe folks don't know you as well. So before we get started with our conversation tonight, would love to just hear a little bit more about each of you, who you are, and what led you to be in your current role, and maybe a couple fun facts or two. So Mayor, what do you have to say?
Oh, well, thank you. This is always a little hard for me, but I think I'll just try to answer two questions that I get very often, which is one, what is your background? And the other one is, how did you get into elected office? And so a little about me is moved here when I was 3 years old by my parents, the youngest of 4 children. I was born in Boulder. Grew up Fort Collins, went to Moore, which is now Polaris, Blevins, and Poudre. Then attended Colorado College, University of Colorado for a master's, joined the Peace Corps, became a teacher of special education, went on for more schooling, and ended up with a PhD in literacy and language from Purdue University. My husband and I have been married 32 years. He is an economist. And we have 3 children who are also proud graduates of Poudre High School. And so that's a little about me, but how did I get involved in politics? And I always kind of laugh when I get this question because I usually say first grade. And that's because my father really believed in community service. And I remember him telling me, if your teacher asks you to do something, you do it. So if someone needed to stay late and clean the desk, that would be you. Need someone to run the lunch count to the principal's office, that would be you raising your hand. And once you start contributing to your classroom, it's a natural lead on to then the principal knows you, so they ask you to be on the principal's student advisory committee or whatever. Eventually, I gave the dedication ceremony at Moore School for the Outdoor Classroom, a public speaking engagement. And then from then on, it goes through school, and a real love and commitment to community service. The other thing my dad always taught me and always said was, always root for the underdog. And I think that comment has stayed with me and been a guiding light in my life, and has really dictated a lot of what I've chosen to do professionally. And then after my family and I were living in Mozambique for 6 years, it was time to move somewhere in the United States. And my husband said, should we just move to your hometown? At which point I burst into tears and said yes. So we moved back to Fort Collins in 2008. And it wasn't long before, honestly, people who I'd known throughout my youth were honestly knocking on my door. One of them, my Blevins Junior High School English teacher, asking me to run for a school board or state representative and so on, of which I said no thank you. But when I finally got it through my thick head that being elected was simply a continuation of the community service I'd always been an advocate for and participant in. It was just being elected. The only difference was you have the privilege of asking your community if they'd like you to serve. So when I came to understand that, then I was elected in 2014, 16, and 18, and then I had the privilege of being elected mayor last spring.
And we're really glad you were.
Well, thank you.
I'm glad to have you here. So I love hearing about the mayor has such long roots here. I've been in Fort Collins a little shorter, but since 1997, which also feels like a while. My background is a little bit different. I grew up in Nebraska. I'm a Nebraska farm girl. My parents actually still live on the farm where I lived through all of my childhood. My siblings, I have a sister and 2 brothers, and they and their families are also still back in Nebraska. But again, I've been here since 97. I have a son. He is grown and now lives in Milwaukee. In November, he got married. So I also now have a daughter-in-law and a grand dog. I love Howie, so have to give a shout out to the grand dog. And, you know, I got into local government, I'll say really honestly by accident. I had was finishing up my degree at Hastings College, a small liberal arts school, and saw a job posted in the newspaper. They used to actually post positions in the newspaper, and for a public information officer for the city of Grand Island, Nebraska. I was fortunate enough to get that job and started right out of school with my office between the mayor on one side of me and the city administrator on the other side. And so I just quickly got this great exposure into really the work of local government and community building, and it was a great fit for me. I had a coworker there who was from the city of Golden, and she actually pointed out this job in Fort Collins to me, a public community and public engagement officer, and she's like, oh, Fort Collins is a great little town. You should check it out. And so I got here and quickly just fell in love with the place. I thought I'd probably be here 4 or 5 years, and 25 years later, I'm still here. Have had the great fortune of being able to have, I think, 8 or 9 different positions in the city organization during that time, and am just really grateful to now be in the role that I'm in. I did go mid-career, actually back to school, and so I also am a proud CSU grad. I'm a Ram fan, a season volleyball ticket holder, and maybe one other fun fact about me, I have been a pianist since I was 8 years old, so have done a few stints in basement bands and played for weddings and funerals and all kinds of fun events. So again, looking forward to this evening's conversation.
Thank you, Kelly. And Mayor, I'm going to put you on the spot because you did share a fun fact earlier, and I think it would be great if you share a little bit about your amazing cycle adventures.
Oh. So I'm supposed to say 2 fun facts, I suppose.
Yeah.
One of them was I did ride my bicycle from San Francisco to New York City once. And I also used to speak Arabic when I was in Peace Corps in Morocco. So
That's amazing. That is quite a trek.
it was great.
Well, thank you both for sharing. It's great to hear a little bit more about your journey. So, you know, as we shift into the conversation for this evening, it's hard to not acknowledge the impact that the past 2 years have had of pandemic, other crises. How have you both seen this play out in our community and within the city organization? What are people doing to pivot and respond, and what have you really observed throughout this period of time? Mayor, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Amanda. I always get kind of emotional when I talk about this topic because the pandemic has been so hard. And I sort of think of it in several ways. That one, it's been like an instant aging machine. It's been a great big magnifier. So where there was a fissure, there's a fracture and before where there may have been a concern, there's more of a crisis. So the pandemic has highlighted some of our weaknesses, which has had impacts on our city, but also has impacted where we think we need to put more energy, resources, and future attention. It's also highlighted some good things, and it has spurred on, I think I read the other day, more business starts last year than several in recent history. So people are being creative and personally pivoted. But we do want to acknowledge that it has been a struggle. I think one of the positive things that's happening is I think as our vulnerabilities are exposed, it's a lot less intimidating to say I need help, to say this isn't working. I think that we're a lot more maybe honest with each other, and that we have a renewed emphasis and appreciation of mental health, being a full partner with physical health. So I also think we have no idea the full impacts of the pandemic right now, as we're still in it and riding these waves, in addition to some climate change waves like this wildfires and other things. But in 10 or 20 years, we'll have a better perspective on the impact this had. I also am a curable optimist, and my husband reminded me that after the global pandemic of 1918, we had the roaring 20s. So we will emerge from this, and we will emerge stronger. In fact, we have chosen that as our theme tonight with our nifty butterfly, and you'll see that throughout our discussion tonight. So those are some of my reflections on the community.
Thank you. Kelly, how about you with the city organization? What does that response look like?
Well, I think the mayor has described well the significance of the event, and although it's become probably a bit of an overused word, unprecedented is what comes to mind for me, because it really has been an unprecedented time. And as a result, we've had to make a lot of adjustments. I also think that it has helped us get, in some cases, laser focused on what's really most important and most needed. And one of the ways in the organization I think about this, sort of coming to light, was as we distributed our CARES funding. And 2/3 of that funding went directly to our community, to our businesses, our nonprofits, and different social needs in the community. And again, in priority fashion. So things that are just fundamental in terms of shelter and people making sure that they weren't going to get evicted if they couldn't pay their rent. Our utilities, making sure that people were able to have, again, their lights on and their water running and those basic things. For some of our more vulnerable populations, we were able to partner with the Fort Collins Rescue Mission and make sure that that was 24/7 service. Certainly with the businesses, helping them with whether it was marketing or helping make sure that they had protective gear for their workforce, there was a lot of focus there on our businesses. I do want to talk just a little bit about the city workforce. We have almost 2,500 colleagues who are providing service day in and day out. And as the community has struggled, some of our frontline employees have really felt that additional pressure as well. And so I just want to acknowledge that and thank them for the work that they have all provided. And so much resilience was demonstrated in how people pivoted. So I think about our recreation centers and saying, you know what? One of the highest needs in the community right now is daycare. And so our recreation staff pivoting to be able to provide more childcare, turning those facilities into temporary vaccine clinics. We were able to bring in Mind Matters, which is a mental health exhibit, to our Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. And again, through partnership with the nonprofit organization, with the city, and with our Larimer County partners, make that free access to the community so that people were able to really be able to get access to information about something that's a really important resource right now. We had to make some service reductions, so transport, we had to scale back that service. We are seeing our services all come back online, but now we have some other challenges. Staffing is one of those. And so transport in particular, although we're ready to ramp that back up, we're still really working to recruit drivers and be able to launch that service back, hopefully full on in this spring. I will say I know the city is not alone in facing some of these challenges, especially with workforce challenges. And so again, our businesses, we're just trying to work in partnership with them. Our For Fort Collins campaign, working on some of the outdoor dining situations to give people, again, expanded opportunities during this challenging time. Back in May, we talked with some of our businesses. It was Business Appreciation Month, and so we had an opportunity to engage with some of those businesses, and it's just so inspiring to hear how they are all stepping up and really working to continue to serve the community. And so we thought it'd be fun tonight to just highlight a few of them and let them share their own stories.
Wonderful. Let's take a look.
Colorado Cuts was developed probably when I was 12 years old. Couldn't find a haircut in Fort Collins. For my 12th birthday, I asked my mom for a pair of clippers, and I started cutting hair then. It just developed into a passion, and I've been cutting hair ever since. I am very conscious of everybody's sensitivities, whether that's their politics or family issues, things that go on in their lives, and I allow this to be a safe place for them to talk and to feel comfortable and understood, mostly just heard. I always let people know, I'm here to listen. You're sitting there, you're so close to them, and it's a very intimate setting. It's one-on-one, and they have 20 minutes to talk to you, and usually you kind of get into the deep stuff. I have a front view seat of their lives and what they're doing. I opened up during the pandemic, and it was scary. There was a lot of ups and downs. There were times where I think my first month I made $400. For a few months there, it was all me. I was here 6 days a week, and it was draining, and I didn't know if we were going to make it some days. Some days with those COVID numbers going up and down, it was just a shot in the dark. But now people want to come out, they want to get haircuts, and so naturally we've made more money and we've done well.
My name is Leanna Valadez. I have been here in Fort Collins for a little over 20 years. 6 years this November of me opening our bar and lounge. And what is our bar? That is a loaded question. On the surface, we are the only LGBTQ plus bar in all of Northern Colorado. But it's more than that. It's not just a bar. It's also the only brick and mortar, physical location for people that are under that acronym of LGBTQ, right? So we have town hall meetings, we bring in our local state representatives, we discuss ballot initiatives when it comes time for voting. We've had weddings here, we've had memorials here, we've done charity auctions, we've done all sorts of stuff. I mean, what bar do you know hosts a town hall meeting, right? You don't normally mix politics and alcohol, that's a bad plan. But we pull it off, because it's the only community space that we have. There's been times where it's been really tough. That was, hurting my bank account. And then almost as if on cue, someone will come up and throw their arms around me and cry on my shoulder and tell me that this space means everything to them and that they feel like they can be who they really are. And that is just enough juice to get through the day and get through the month and the year and keep doing it because it's bigger than me.
My name is Becky Lauritsen. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I'm the very proud founder of IOME. It's an IOME instead of an IOU, and our entire purpose is to create guilt-free self-care for everyone. The first step to self-care is our mental health, and we address that by offering individual coaching, counseling, psychoeducation, and even group support as well. What we do is we take a preventative approach to our mental health. This year and a half has thrown us a loop, right, to say the least, and I have seen an influx in a lot of what we usually hear, which is stress, anxiety, overwhelm, depression, any and everything that can happen, but now we've seen it be even more intense. And so the last year and a half, we've really been able to support men, women, especially moms as well, with being able to figure out this work-life harmony, that it doesn't have to be a balance, because that's impossible, right? We can't balance things very equally when we are working from home now, or when we are having to juggle all these other circumstances. We just have to address it ahead of time. And so we've been able to do that a lot with our clients and help them realize that this is hard because it's hard, not because we're doing anything wrong, not because you're failing as a mom or as a wife or a husband or a partner or an employee, but it's hard because it's hard.
Pues mi nombre es Janina Fariñas y mis antecedentes son de que soy psicóloga clínica y también la fundadora y la directora de La Cocina. Yo estaba como profesora en CSU en lo que es el campo de psicología, el campo de counseling o de consejería, y en ese campo hay pocos estudiantes latinoamericanos. Nos estaban llegando muchísimas remisas específicamente para niños latinos, y ese fue el principio de La Cocina.
Entonces este es parte del trabajo que estamos haciendo mucho con niños chiquititos, es apoyarles. Yo sé que hemos visto con niños que es más difícil prestar atención. Trabajando con personas que han tenido mucho trauma o están teniendo muchas experiencias de estrés, no queremos decir qué es mal contigo, es más que qué está pasando, esa es la situación. Queremos entender un poco más, porque lo que estás experimentando es una reacción normal.
My name is Paul Benson. I'm the Chief HR Officer for Woodward. Woodward is a manufacturer in the aerospace and the industrial industries, and we are a prominent employer here in the Fort Collins area. We've got about 1,300 members in the greater Fort Collins area. One of the unique things about this pandemic has been the personal nature of it. We've had a large percentage of our population that doesn't have the luxury like some of the technology industry companies do or other industries have of working from home full time. We've got a large percentage of employees whose jobs are not able to be done remotely, so they've been working nonstop through the pandemic. That was a huge impact on them, huge impact on the company, and the challenges that arise from that have been monumental. We saw it, we felt it, we all felt it. I personally felt it. I know many people around the organization did, and it was imperative that we took a position that mental health was critical and important. We wanted to encourage members to really start thinking about mental health differently than they have before. We increased the number of free counselor visits that are provided under our EAP to 10. So any member or dependent of their members can go to 10 free therapy visits per issue. And as a company, we recognized, I think it started with acknowledging this is something most of us living have never gone through and we've never experienced. And how do we respond to that? How do our families respond to that? How do our friends, and how do our employers respond to that?
There's been times where I didn't know that I could pull it off, or maybe I wasn't the right person, or it seemed like such a huge labor of love.
Hay creo que un narrativo muy fuerte sobre que los latinos necesitan más servicios de salud mental que otros grupos, y esto pues no es verdad. Por supuesto que nuestras comunidades están lidiando con problemas muy grandes y la persona necesita apoyo para poder atravesar ese mundo.
We have people that were nervous to come into the building, people that were nervous to interact with people. And as a company, I'm proud of how we responded.
So we're working through so many other things. And yes, they came to light because of the pandemic, but they're going to be free from it forever on out.
You build a rapport with somebody and you get to trust them. It's a skill, and I've realized that that's very empowering for a lot of people, and I've seen it change a lot of people's lives. I really have.
Such inspiring stories from all of them. I really appreciate hearing those stories. So we're back. Thanks for bearing with us, and hopefully you didn't hear some interference, but if you did, we apologize. We were having some mic challenges there during the break, so we acknowledge that you might have heard some stuff while we were testing that out. But want to get back to the conversation tonight. You know, the pandemic obviously caused a lot of shifts for people, and the shifts weren't just around the pandemic. We're seeing a lot of transition in our community and within our organization. So kind of feels like we're in a season of change. So can I ask the two of you to maybe talk about some of the other transitions that you're seeing? Kelly, I'll start with you, just within the organization, what kind of shifts you're seeing?
Absolutely. And Amanda, I was thinking about the mayor's comment earlier about vulnerability, and there's nothing like a little technology glitch to help you be vulnerable, right? So again, we'll just continue on. But looking at the two of us is one of the changes that we have seen in the organization. So for me, what again comes to mind is the amount of transition that we have had, both in our elected leadership and on many of our city staff positions. Back in April, we welcomed 4 new council members to City Council, and you know, people will notice we have 6 female City Council members now. We have a mix of council members who, some are pretty new to local government, others who come with a lot of history and experience, and so it really is providing just a great mix of perspectives, and I think, you know, this council is really working together well, and as the mayor will share in a bit, has a lot they want to accomplish. That was followed not too long after that with a transition in the city leadership, as our long-term city manager, Darren Atterbury, who many of us worked with and for a lot of years, moved into the private sector. And so that has been a big adjustment for us as well, and just appreciate all the work he did, and now, again, am also enjoying the opportunity to be in the interim role. On our city executive team, we have hired multiple new positions over the course of the year. It was just over a year ago that Kyle Stannert began as our new deputy city manager. We have moved Tyler Marr into an assistant city manager role. He moved there. We have a new broadband executive director, a connection executive director, Chad Krager, and Chad's really helping us bring more transparency to our connection services. Seve Ghosh is our new community services director, so that's Parks and Recreation, Cultural Services, Natural Areas. He is new in that role. Just a couple weeks ago, Anissa Hollingshed started as our new city clerk. I think she's on week 3 with the organization, so we're glad to have her here. We have a new fire chief, Derek Bergston, and again, new to Poudre Fire Authority and to that organization. And I'm really excited to share that on February 22nd, we'll have a new utilities executive director. So we are officially announcing that Kendall Miner accepted that position just yesterday. And so we're really glad that he's going to be joining us. One other new person and new role that we brought into the city organization was our equity and inclusion officer, and Claudia Menendez is filling that role for us. This is something, you know, that has been a priority for us as an organization, and really helping to shape the focus in that space. So Claudia has just been a great addition to the team, and I think is helping us, you know, really further define how we do meaningful work in this space and engage with a diverse group of community members and also engage them in that work. So those are just, again, some of the transitions and change that come to mind for me.
That's just a few to mention,
Just a
right?
few.
Just a few. And the leadership has changed in our community too, and not just in the city, right? So we acknowledge that too across our partner agencies. So pre and post pandemic is a little fuzzy, I think, for everyone. So it's been almost 2 years, and it seems in some ways like the longest 2 years of your life, and it also seems like no time at all. So I'll just acknowledge that Colorado State University's president, even though Joyce came before the pandemic, that was a big shift in leadership. We also have a new head of Poudre School District, school superintendent, a new executive director of the chamber, a new executive director of the United Way. Poudre Library District is seeing new leadership. And it just seems like across the board we're seeing a lot of change. And some of that change has been quite interesting and remarkable. In fact, I had a dinner last fall with 5 other city leaders, and we were all women, and we remarked that if that same dinner had happened a year prior, it would have been 6 men. So that's neither here nor there. It's just worthy of remark that change is here, and it's quite rapid, right? So we think about the pandemic as a physical disease, which it is, but I think what's really we're talking about here in terms of our community, a lot in addition to the physical illness, is the social impacts, right, of a physical illness. So those are some of the things that I in my life and my thinking, I focus on the impacts of that, and I think that's. We have great epidemiologists and scientists developing all sorts of vaccines and guiding us. We also have less of a firm scientific basis for guidance through our social change, right? And so this is what we need to do absolutely all together, and I'm convinced of it. And a lot of it takes compassion, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does make me think about one, compassion that you don't ever know what people are going through, and a lot of things people have going on in their lives, and also just that people are all in different places. As we talk about these transitions, even as I was listening to you, I was thinking about some of the new relationships we're building in the community with some of these community leaders that are really, really wonderful. And so there's a lot of change and transition, and also, again, we just want to have compassion for people being in different places and kind of accepting wherever people may be.
That's right. And it also makes me think, too, we keep talking about all this change. You know what hasn't changed? You know more than I do, that you're still running the city. So 24/7 services in it's like 2 layers, right? So these are all the changes that we're seeing, and here's all the actual functionings of municipal government. What's that been like, Kelly?
It's so true. I mean, our 24/7, 365 services have still remained intact. So again, the lights are on and the water's clean, and 911 calls are being answered and potholes are being filled, and we're responding to snowstorms when they come. Again, there's a little irony that it's snowing right now as we're doing this. You know, back in March, we had one of the largest snowstorms in our community's history, and 23 inches of what was actually very heavy, wet snow at the time fell. And I just think about the effort it took and the way that people came out to get that cleared up. We had 4,700 labor hours to plow those roads. It was over 10,000 miles of roadway that were cleared during that time. The trees, many of you may remember, the tree damage was pretty severe, so we had 3,100 trees that our forestry crews were out there in partnership with some contractors getting cleaned up, and it was just really an impressive response. And that's one of the things that I most appreciate about our city, is that we are going to be there, and when those services are needed, we're going to be there and we're going to be providing them. In addition to the 24/7, 365, there were some pretty big accomplishments in the last year that are worth celebrating. One of those is the Vine and LeMay overpass. If you've been on that side of town, the north side of town, it really provides some great connectivity that we haven't had before, and is going to improve access to that side of town for decades to come. Some other big accomplishments in the space of our public safety. We opened the Northern Colorado Law Enforcement Training Center. This was done in partnership with Loveland, and I just think we all hear a lot about the increasing challenges in the world of policing, and how important it is that people are trained really well. And so in Fort Collins, I'm proud that we've made an investment in a training facility. We've also launched our own police academy, which has been, we're in our 2nd class of cadets right now. The other thing that we have worked hard to do is to have the right kind of resources responding. And so in partnership with UC Health, have mental health co-responders that are going out. And this year in the budget, Council actually approved expanding that program so that we are now able to have that as part of our force all the time, that we have co-responders who are able to serve the community and respond to those calls. Another thing, exciting new park opened, Traverse Park, again on the north side of town, and our community does love our parks. During the pandemic, between parks and natural areas, it was about a 300% increase in usage of those. So just demonstrates how much the community really values those. Another accomplishment that I think is worth sharing is Bobcat Ridge was restored. You may recall the big fire there. We had about 80% of that was burned in 2020. And so some really significant restoration work that occurred there to be able to reopen back in 2021. And then again, even though we're not at the Lincoln Center tonight, I just want to do a shout out to the return of our culture and recreation facilities. So the gardens, another beloved community facility, had concerts and over 30,000 visitors at the Gardens of Lights this year. Our recreation classes, I think, had 750,000 different opportunities that occurred across all of our facilities. And so, you know, again, things are back in full force. Lots of folks are out golfing. I think 92,000 rounds of golf last year. So, you know, people are enjoying these community amenities. And again, I want to say thank you to our city staff who are continuing to serve in that way.
That's great. And one other big thing, I think you've mentioned it a little bit before, but let's talk a little bit about connection.
Yes, we love Connection, right? Our new broadband service that's coming on. And this is one of those things that, again, at the same time we're providing our daily services, we're doing things to really future-proof the community. And so we're in full build-out mode, Mayor.
I'm very excited. I haven't had the opportunity to join yet, but I will. And I think that in the future, you know, just in this big snowstorm that hit the East Coast, you know, you're hearing about all the power down and the people out of power. And for Collins, that doesn't happen because our people who came before us had the foresight to bury those lines. And I'm thinking about the future when we look back to the connections 30 years from now. We'll be so glad we did, right? It was voted in 3 times by the voters. Public utility broadband was a gig up and a gig down. Mm-hmm. I'm especially proud of the digital equity aspect where people with limited income will receive the exact same gig up and gig down, because if we offer them a reduced rate but a reduced speed, I think that we would be increasing the digital divide. And if we are committed to erasing that, I think that's a huge step. So I'm very proud of that. Let's just say also it's not easy. Let's acknowledge that. But projects this big aren't.
Yeah.
And I was on a national mayor's call one day, and they said, you know, in terms of digital, in the digital space, what did your city do in the pandemic? And, you know, some cities were coming up with, well, we, you know, gave free Wi-Fi at City Hall, or we put Wi-Fi in the library so people could, you know, and those are great things to do. And they said, Fort Collins, what'd you do? I said, well, we're trying to hardwire every single resident in the entire city. And they said, what? And I said, as a public utility. So I think when we are doing these projects, a perspective is a valuable thing to have, right? Especially when we're in the really hard part, right?
Yeah, and you know, when we started this, it was pre-pandemic, certainly. And one of the things that the pandemic, I think, again, really exemplified is that digital access isn't a luxury. I mean, when we think about our education, our kids, schools, we need people to have access and quality access. And so I know that the question we get most often is, when are you going to be in my neighborhood? How soon can I get it? And so we just appreciate people being patient with that. We are expecting to complete build out by the end of 2022 and service coming online. And so if people, you know, they can go to our website, and we're actually making some improvements there that you can look at the map and at least find out by season when service is expected to be available in your neighborhood. So
Great.
We're excited about that.
I am too. I'll sign up when I get a chance.
Coming your way relatively soon, we think.
Soonish, yeah. So let's switch to some council priorities. We were elected in April, and then I don't know if people know, then the city council meets at a retreat, and we set priorities for the following 2 years, where we'll sit as a council before the next election, when we could have some turnover and those sorts of things. So we only chose 31 priorities. That seems reasonable. And those are things that we work on over the next 2 years. And obviously, some of them are easier to achieve than others. Some are longer term goals and some are shorter term. This council chose to have a heavy emphasis on climate action, renewables, and the environment. Equally, we also emphasize affordable housing, childcare, thinking about future resources such as water, land, and we also have a heavy emphasis on civic participation. You can find those 31 priorities on our website. I won't go over them individually tonight, but I wanted to give you sort of broad themes that we are working on, and we're happy to update you anytime on those. So.
That's a great segue to the next question I have, really kind of future focused and thinking about things on the horizon and where we want to go and what we want to do. And, we've had this theme of emerging, and while we may not have been able to, choose what happened to us throughout the pandemic, we do have an opportunity to choose what happens as we come out of it. So my next question is really about who do we want to be as we emerge in this next version of ourselves, and how do we get there? So I'm going to start with you again, Kelly, on just kind of what's on the horizon.
Well, again, one of the things I appreciate about this community is its high level of engagement. And so I think that definition of who do we want to be as we emerge is one that we're all defining collectively. And we have some great plans that are already in the works and things that we can build on. So I mentioned earlier Vine and LeMay is one of those transformational capital projects. We are continuing to make pretty significant investments in the capital infrastructure of the city. So we have approximately $65 million in this year's budget. One of the big projects that we'll be doing this year is actually converting Linden Street into more of a convertible street that can be used for festivals and activities, in addition to still having some of those standard transportation functions. So that's going to be a project that, again, as you think about our downtown as a gathering space and place for community connections, is going to be a really great project. I'll also acknowledge that, again, there's some short-term pain that comes with that, and we know that it's a difficult time for our business community along there, and so we're going to be doing what we can to mitigate that. Hughes Stadium is another big one that's on the radar. This is something that the city will be purchasing from CSU later this year. And we are soon going to be launching a broad community engagement process around what's the plan for that property. We know we have some high-level guidance and expectations, requirements, I guess, from the voters in terms of open space and recreation purposes. But how that really gets designed and how that functions is yet to be determined, and something we're going to work on this year. I'm pleased that part of what we'll be doing in that conversation is really working closely with our Indigenous community and hearing some of their goals and desires for that land as well. Another big one that I think about is East Mulberry. So since 2002, we have been talking about how that part of Fort Collins will continue to grow and develop, and what's the character of that space. So we need to make a decision if that's going to be annexed into the city or not. That will be something coming to City Council on whether we want that to become part of our city limits. So as we think about that future build out, certainly we're evaluating from a financial impact, but also really from a level of service to that part of the community and thinking about the overall urban character. And again, when we envision the future of Fort Collins, how do we see that eastern side of our community? So kind of got Hughes on the west side, Mulberry on the east side. The other big thing that I just think about is recovery. And so, we have recently completed, are in the process of completing, a widespread community engagement effort around our recovery plan. And there are 4 main theme areas from that. One of them is health and just the ongoing health of the community. One of them is in community and equity resilience. One is the economic recovery, and then finally, Mayor, as you mentioned, that environmental resilience is certainly a priority. So more work coming in those spaces as we start to implement that plan.
Right. Speaking of plans, so moving into the future, I feel like I'd like to recognize all those who have come before us and all their vision and their foresight. And I'd also like to mention their practicality and their pragmatism. And I'm just hoping that Fort Collins, in fact, I know we will, move forward with that spirit in mind, building on the great foundation that I think the core of what makes Fort Collins great is not necessarily Old Town. It's not necessarily one thing or another. It's actually the ideas and the approach behind them. So it's the thinking and not the outcome, right? So moving into the future, we have some great plans that are guiding us. So our climate future was adopted. The housing strategic plan was adopted last year, both before I became mayor, and had robust engagement from our community. Moving into the future for the upcoming, in the short term, we're considering land use code revisions and an active modes plan, always working toward a ever more bicycle-friendly community, something near and dear to my heart. And then we're working on the recovery plan, of course. We're going to have a lot of federal funding coming to us, as you mentioned, some of those core values that we're going to tackle with that. But we want to do it with all of our civic partners and also with all of our regional partners. So we have increasing interdependency and regional impacts while maintaining individual characters of our municipalities. So regionalism was one of the 31 adopted priorities, and I think that's, again, the global pandemic really highlights our interdependency. And then we're also committed to maintaining the character of Fort Collins as well. So that's something coming to us. So one thing that Council also prioritized was considering how we get the maximum engagement from voters. So right now when we have elections in April, we get about a 30% turnout. In November, the turnouts are about 87%. So that seems like a concerning issue, something worthy of attention and consideration. And rest at ease, anything that's a code or charter change will come to the people. So right now it's just being considered. We're talking about some ideas, and we appreciate everyone's input on the Election Code Committee. And then we'll refer something to council, and council will take it up from there. But that is another way that we really want to make sure that we're getting full participation so that the electeds can look like the electorate in Fort Collins.
Yeah, Mayor, you just articulate many things again where we're looking long-term future. And so thinking about some of those longer-term impacts. Another one of those areas that we're talking about is service levels for the city organization and how we sustainably fund those. So there are a few areas that over the past several years, I'd say, have really emerged as an area that we want to further explore. One of those is in the area of parks asset management. We have some really good information that shows that we're underfunding that by just about $8 million a year in order to be able to continually reinvest in the wonderful park system that we have built. Another one of those is affordable housing. This is something that certainly anywhere we go, we hear from the community. We know this is a challenge for us. We know it's a priority to figure out, as you said, how can people who work here, how can they live here? And so, if the city wants to make significant investment in that, that's something that we need to be talking more about to really expand on what we're already doing. The other area is in our transit system, and knowing that we have this wonderful master plan to build out transit throughout the community, but we aren't currently resourced at a level to be able to do that. And so this is one where we don't have predetermined outcomes, and we really want to engage with the community and figure out what is the level of service that they both desire and are willing to pay for, and then for council to be working on what's the most realistic way to do that. And again, how do we do that in a way that preserves the trust of our community members and our voters? Because at the end of the day, That's one of the greatest responsibilities that I think we have is to preserve trust in local government. We know not everyone is always going to agree with everything, and yet we will be transparent and explain the why behind our decisions and engage the community in making many of those decisions. So, Mayor, one of the things that we have talked about with this council in the transition is there's a lot of ambitious goals. We want to move quickly to do some things, and yet we have this strong history of really robust engagement. And so talk a little bit about how you see us balancing that tension.
Yeah, and that is a tension, and it's a good one. I was an intern on Capitol Hill for a semester, and I got so frustrated. I said, why does everything move so slowly? This was in Washington, D.C. And the chief of staff said, would you have your government move quickly? And I was only 19 at the time, but that really stuck with me, right? I will admit that I have some similar tension here, but that's okay, right? Because you do want to balance the need to continue the 24/7 services, to move into the future, to reimagine sort of how we're going to emerge from this shock, and at the same time, do it deliberately and thoughtfully, right? And well-resourced and sustainably, right? So starting a program and then having it end in 2 years is it feels great, but it doesn't help. So that's a natural tension, and I think that's something we're going to be dealing with. We do want to be nimble and flexible, but we do need to honor our commitment to community engagement. And I will say that I was selected to go to Kettering to a conference thing. And I said, why am I here? And they said, because you're from Fort Collins. And I said, well, okay, I know that. And they said, well, we feel that Fort Collins does community engagement very well. And I said, oh, why? I mean, I think we don't even realize what we do here because it's just in our bones. So I do it because the people who came before me do it, right? So when I was a state rep, you go every other Saturday and you talk, right? So we have the same philosophy at the city, right? And there are a lot of ways to engage. So I'm going to get to that responsibility part too in a few minutes. So in terms of our priorities, we've had some short-term policy decisions that have been made, and some of them in terms of plastic pollution, advanced gender equity in the sales tax code. We're moving towards, and we haven't voted, so I would never say how it's going to come out, but we are considering adopting a gray water ordinance for new buildings. We are always talking about improved air quality. In the longer term, we talk about trash districting. We'll talk about focus on riparian and bird species restoration, workforce development, childcare and housing, minimum wage, and all these things we want to do collectively, so that's really hard. But now I get to quote Barney Frank, my favorite quote. If you're tired of me saying this, just bear with me, because government is just the word we use for the things we choose to do together. So someone asked me, said, is childcare really a function of municipal government? I said, well, I don't know. Is it? I mean, if that's a community value and that's where we're going to put our collective money in to that service for the community, yeah, that's government. If that's not what we think, then there'll be, So we all get to choose. So that's a thing that I really think is exciting. So how do you get engaged? The very simplest thing to do is to write us an email or call us. The next level, you can come down to City Council every other Tuesday and speak for 3 minutes. We had a gentleman come a week or two ago and just said, can I say whatever I want to? I said, please do. And he said he had an idea about affordable housing. And he just said it. So he said, great. So we connected with some of our housing people. So it's really that simple. Sometimes we're hard to get a hold of because we're busy. There's 178,000 people who reside here. But someone else contacted me a few weeks ago, a small business owner, and said I'd like to meet with the mayor and have a cup of coffee and see how I can get involved. So we met, and I gave them a list of ways to get involved, and it can be just that. We also have 25 boards and commissions that you can apply to be on. Everything from the Human Relations Commission to the Water Board to the Golf Board, Parks and Rec. Really any topic that you think you might be personally interested or professionally well versed in, we would love to hear from you and have your expertise. And then that doesn't even, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I don't see, people say, I want to be like you. I say, I don't know what that means. Well, I want to be elected. And I say, why? So really you get down to it, being elected is a way to serve your community. It's not the best role, usually, but it's a role. But there are so many other roles, and there's no inherent hierarchy in community service, right? So when I talk to third graders, if you're helping out in your classroom, we're already doing the same thing. If you're coaching a athletic team, if you're being a great neighbor, if you're doing the shoveling neighbor program that we have, I did that for years. That's all I could handle then, that's all part of what we're talking about, is coming together as a community. So I encourage you to think of public service and commitment to community in all sorts of ways. So being engaged is one thing, being engaged with city councils another. So we welcome all of it.
Well, I love that, and that's partially because I'm in the Communications and Public Involvement Office, and so have to also give a little plug for our engagement site, ourcity.fcgov.com, which is another place where people can learn about current projects and engagement opportunities and get involved. So I really appreciate that that call to action, Mayor. And so we're kind of winding down with our time tonight, and I'd love to just hear any closing remarks that you all have. What's inspiring you and exciting you for the future, and how do you want to send us off tonight? Kelly, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Amanda. Well, first I just have to say this went so fast. I hope that people watching feel the same way, but it's so great to be able to just sit back and reflect about what it is about Fort Collins that makes it special. And one of the things for me is how much people care about this place. And so when I think about that, whether again it's my 2,400 colleagues who are delivering service day in and day out, whether it's the business owner I just spoke with who has some suggestions for how we can improve our process, and they're offering it from a genuine place of wanting this to be a good community for everyone. Whether it's the, again, neighbor who's telling me about how great it was for their kid to be at a recreation program. Like, people genuinely care about Fort Collins, and that gives me such hope for how we're going to emerge from this. And so I'm really inspired by that. We want to give people a chance, since we weren't able to gather in person, we want to give people a chance to just have an interaction in a different way. And so our wonderful Communications and Public Involvement Office has designed these postcards that we're going to have available in our city recreation facilities that are a chance for people to just send a little thank you to someone in the community that you think is making this a better place. And so again, that could be a neighbor, it could be a teacher, it could be a business owner, whoever it might be. So I'm just grateful this evening and appreciate the chance to be here.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. I echo that, and I would say a city is fundamentally about its people, and nothing more, nothing less. And I think Fort Collins is special, and so are a lot of communities. Let's make sure we say that. But if you slow down in your day and you look around, you'll see the character of Fort Collins. I pulled into a small business the other day and got out of my car, and I just saw a gentleman offering his arm to a woman to help her across the ice, right? I stopped in the middle of my street to talk to my neighbor, and a car came behind me and didn't honk and asked me to get out of the way. They drove around and waved like, oh, I'm so glad you're talking to your neighbor, right? So I think that we all do these things and we all see them. And I think sometimes if we just slow down, I go swim at the Epic and I see people, towels on the floor, they just pick it up, you know? Little things like that really make a community. They make your day. You can make somebody else's day. And I also love that we're just more openly speaking about our empathy and our desire for connection with each other. And So I'm an eternal optimist, and so now I get to say that the state of the city is caring, it's evolving, and it's resilient.
Thank you both. Really appreciate your time tonight and all the great updates that you've shared with us and things that we can be looking forward to. So a little more detail about the postcards. They'll be available in city facilities across the community beginning at the end of this week. And, we're leading into Valentine's Day, so this is an opportunity for you to send a love note to someone who's making Fort Collins a better place. They're pre-postage stamped already, so easy for you to write something and drop it in. And again, as Kelly mentioned, we wish we could send our own little greeting to each of you out there. So instead, we have a video postcard message that we're going to close with tonight. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this note from us.
Dear Fort Collins, we know the last year has presented its share of challenges, and that all of us want to believe in a better and brighter future. We live in an incredible place, a growing city with no shortage of small-town magic. A place with stunning parks, never-ending recreation, and spectacular arts and culture. We're also a place known for being forward-thinking and sparking true innovation. The pandemic has taken a toll, but it won't always be like this. We will emerge from this moment stronger. We will build new connections, bringing our community closer to each other and the things that matter most. Fort Collins, you have shown unbelievable resilience, but our best days are not behind us. They're just around the corner. We can't wait to see what is possible through our compassion, our collaboration, and by holding close one undeniable truth. The future of Fort Collins is as bright as we make it. And with your help, we plan to make it something truly amazing. With love, the City of Fort Collins.